A few weeks after this, the purchase was concluded, and at the close of the season, the minister and his family went down to Canterville Chase. Mrs. Otis, who, as Lucretia Artipen of West 53rd Street, had been a celebrated New York belle, was now a very handsome, middle-aged woman with fine eyes and a superb profile. Many American ladies, on leaving their native land, adopt an appearance of chronic ill health under the impression that it is a form of European refinement. But Mrs. Otis had never fallen into this error. She had a magnificent constitution and a really wonderful amount of animal spirits. Indeed, in many respects, she was quite English, and was an excellent example of the fact that we have really everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, language. Her eldest son, christened Washington by his parents in a moment of patriotism, which he never ceased to regret, was a fair-haired, rather good-looking young man, who had qualified himself for American diplomacy by leading the German at the Newport Casino for 3 successive seasons, and even in London was well known as an excellent dancer. Gardenias and the peerage were his only weaknesses. Otherwise, he was extremely sensible. Miss Virginia E. Otis was a little girl of 15, lithe and lovely as a fawn, and with a fine freedom in her large blue eyes. She was a wonderful Amazon, and had once raced old Lord Bilton on her pony twice round the park, winning by a length and a half, just in front of the Achilles statue, to the huge delight of the young Duke of Cheshire, who proposed for her on the spot, and was sent back to Eton that very night by his guardians, in flood of tears. After Virginia came the twins, who were usually called the Star and the Stripes, as they were always getting sweets. They were delightful boys, and, with the exception of the worthy minister, the only true Republicans of the family. As Canterville Chase is 7 miles from Ascot, the nearest railway station, Mr. Otis had telegraphed for a wagonette to meet them, and they started on their drive in high spirits. It was a lovely July evening, and the air was delicate with the essence of the pine woods. Now and then they heard a wood pigeon brooding over its own sweet voice, or so, deep in the rustling fern, the brutish breeze of the pheasant. Little squirrels peered at them from the beech trees as they went by, and the rabbits scuttled away through the brushwood and over the mossy knolls, with their white tails in the air. As the entirety the avenue of Canterville Chase, however, the sky became suddenly overcast with clouds. A curious stillness seemed to hold the atmosphere. A great flight of rocks passed silently over their heads, and before they reached the house, some big drops of rain had fallen. Standing on the steps to receive them was an old woman, neatly dressed in black silk, with a white cap and apron. This was Mrs. Omney, the housekeeper, whom Mrs. Otis, at Lady Canterville's earnest request, had consented to keep in her former position. She made them each a low courtesy as they alighted, and said in a quiet, old-fashioned manner, "I'd be you welcome to Canterville Chase." Following her, they passed through the fine Tudor hall into the library, a long, low room, paneled in black oak, at the end of which a large stained glass window. Here they found tea laid out for them, and after taking off their wraps, they sat down and began to look around, while Mr. Otney waited on them. Suddenly, Mrs. Otis caught sight of a dull red stain on the floor just by the fireplace, and quite unconscious of what it really signified, said to Mrs. Otney, "I am afraid something has been spilled there." "Yes, madam," replied the old housekeeper in a low voice. "Blood has been spilled on that spot." "How horrid!" cried Mrs. Otis. "I don't at all care for blood stains in a sitting room. It must be removed at once." The old woman smiled, and answered in the same loud, mysterious voice, "It is the blood of Lady Eleanor de Canterville, who was murdered on that very spot by her own husband, Sir Simon de Canterville, in 1575. Sir Simon survived her 9 years, and disappeared suddenly under very mysterious circumstances. His body has never been discovered, but his guilty spirit still haunts the chase. The blood stain has been much admired by tourists and others, and cannot be removed." "That is all nonsense," cried Washington Otis. "Pinkerton's Champion Stain Remover and Paragon Detergent will clean it up in no time." And before the terrified housekeeper could interfere, he had fallen upon his knees and was rapidly scouring the floor with a small stick of what looked like a black cosmetic. In a few moments, no trace of the blood stain could be seen. "I knew Pinkerton would do it," he exclaimed triumphantly, as he looked round at his admiring family. But no sooner had he said these words than a terrible flash of lightning lit up the sombre room. A fearful peal of thunder made them all start to their feet, and Mrs. Otney fainted. "What a monstrous climate!" said the American minister, calmly, as he led along. She wrote, "I guess the whole country is so overpopulated that they have not enough decent weather for everybody. I have always been of opinion that emigration is the only thing for England." "My dear Hiram," cried Mrs. Otis, "what can we do with a woman who faints?" "Shut it to her like breakages," answered the minister. "She won't faint after that." And in a few moments Mrs. Otney certainly came to. There was no doubt, however, that she was strangely upset, and she sternly warned Mr. Otis to beware of some trouble coming to the house.